Welcome everyone to the Success Elevated podcast. As always, I'm your host, Hayden Lee, and I am joined this week by a very special guest, Aaron Suttenfield, owner and operator of RDS Lawn Care. Aaron, thanks for joining us on the show this week.
Thanks for having me, Hayden. It's a pleasure to be here and excited to talk with you for a little bit.
Yeah, this is going to be awesome for me because I get to pick your brain a little bit further. Obviously, we have a lot of people that we work with here at Spot On Solutions that are awesome and do some awesome things in some really cool industries. And, you know, I got to start working with you here a few weeks ago, and I'm excited to kind of progress this and learn more from you and see if we can help you grow your business even more. And today, you know, the main goal for me, I feel like you have a really cool story. I feel like your story resonates well with me and with, I think, a lot of our audience. And so that's kind of where I'd like to start. I think first and foremost, Aaron, is if you wouldn't mind, you own this really cool lawn care company in North Carolina. Talk a little bit about how you got started in the lawn care industry and what kind of made you want to do this. Why start a business? Why be an entrepreneur? Kind of let us, let's pick your brain a little bit on this stuff.
Yeah. I guess my story started back in probably elementary, middle school, with being an entrepreneur. I wrote a paper in the 5th grade that I still have today that I was, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I was trying to join this safety patrol team at my school. So there's a little bit of extra work outside of school to kind of prove that I was worthy of being on this group. And they asked, there's a lot of things we had to do that spring. But one of them was, what do you want to be when you grow up? And in the 5th grade, that was probably like 1987, somewhere in that range. So as in North Carolina, huge NBA college basketball fan. Michael Jordan was kind of starting to be at his peak. And so I wanted to be an NBA basketball player. And if that didn't work, that was plan A. Plan B was I wanted to own my own business. My dad had started a company around that time, and he'd always been in we'd been in corporate America, and then he had gotten into some smaller companies and had gone out on his own. So I think that I was aware of that at that age and thought that was really cool. So plan A, basketball player. Plan B, own my own business. And all through junior high, high school, and even early college, I was just hustling. I think I had a job for about 8 months at a local grocery store and realized, I was making $4.25 an hour. And that's probably early 90s. And I just realized, man, I'm spending 20 hours a week here and I could wash a couple cars. I could, just always thinking of different things I could kind of grind on and hustle at. I was very involved in church growing up and still am to this day. And I got out the church directory back in those days. We had a little printed directory of every family and there's pictures. And I just called every person in the church directory and said, hey, I'll come pick your car up. I'll detail it. I'll wash it. And I'll bring it back to you for $20. And it'd take me about an hour to do all that. And now I was making, 4 or 5 times what I could make, punching a clock. And I just realized early on at that point, like, this is cool. Like I want to be in control. I remember junior year of high school, I could wash 3 or 4 cars a week and I was pretty well off, just a little bit of pocket money. And I remember my mom getting kind of frustrated with me, like saying, this isn't teaching you anything. You're not, you're going to have to work one day. You're going to have to, learn to be at work. And I remember just being really frustrated with her by this. She was an educator. So both my parents college educated, met in college. My dad's in the business world. My mom's teaching. And to them, that was the thing I needed to do. I needed to learn how to work and be a worker and, go get educated, find a good place to be and be a worker. And I just remember being really turned off by that. And I pretty decent student, but in school, I would probably just, always think, why are we wasting time with this busy work? Why are we not doing more, and probably thought I knew more than everybody else and, kind of arrogant about that, to be honest with you. But anyway, so it kind of started there. I go to college because that's what everybody told me I should do. And my parents probably felt like I would be letting them down a little bit if I didn't. And, again, they were educated and, in the 60s, college education was a big ticket. Even in the 90s, it was, right? Less and less today, right? We're kind of seeing, people kind of break away from that mold a little bit. But I go, have no idea what I want to do, and pretty much waste my time. Come home with a 1.9 GPA after 2 semesters, and both me and the college agreed I'm not coming back. And so I was kind of just kind of went back to what I knew, which is like, I need to hustle. I need to find something I can get into. My brother had started doing a little mowing service. He's a little bit older than me, and he had started doing some landscaping and mowing, and I started helping him. And I thought, I need to do something, make a little money. I've got to decide what's my next step. And 27 years later, I'm still here. Outlasted him, and he stuck with it about 3 years, and then it's been me ever since. And so I'm on my 27th year of owning and operating a lawn care business, and it's evolved greatly over 27 years, as you can imagine. But that's kind of how I got into it. I just
I love
feel
it.
like I've always had an entrepreneur spirit, and I love entrepreneurship. There was a period of time where I felt like there's many people in my life, unfortunately, but I don't blame them. They didn't really know any better, but they were kind of like, hey, hey, Peter Pan, when are you going to grow up and do something, like a real job? Like, when are you going
Right.
to do your real thing? And, I just I didn't listen. And probably that made me want to follow this even more. I'm the kind of person, if you tell me I can't do something, or you shouldn't do this, if I feel strong about it, you're probably gonna entrench me more. But yeah, so that's kind of how it started. Yeah.
That's awesome. Was there anything particular, Aaron, that led you to like the service industry? Do you feel like, obviously your brother was doing some things similar to that? Was there anything that kind of you gravitate? Obviously you had this entrepreneurial spirit, right? Like this is something you wanted to do. You wanted to own your own business. Was there a particular reason you chose the service industry, or was it just like, hey, my brother's doing this, maybe I give this a try?
I think if my brother were scooping up dog crap, I probably would have been scooping up dog crap. To be honest with you,
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
there wasn't a ton of thought put into
right,
the industry. If he had started a software company, I'd probably figure out how to program and be doing software or something. I don't know.
yeah,
And I'm not making light of software. I may not even be smart enough to get in that. But like seriously, I think at 18 years old, I mean, I was gonna turn 19. I was just 18 and turning 19, and really at that point, not doing well in college. I was not a moron. I just didn't apply myself. I wasn't
right.
motivated. I wasn't, I just, again, for me, if I don't see the purpose, it's hard for me to jump in, and so I just wasn't really passionate about it. I just didn't see a path, and I'm a planner, and I was just not. I didn't see the plan. I couldn't commit. And so at that point, it's kind of like I need something to do this summer. Just kind of like let me land here a little bit. Let me figure things out. My story also is a little unique at that particular point as that was happening. My oldest, I'm the youngest of three boys. My oldest brother was actually murdered in May of that year. And so it was a pretty big transition at that point.
Yeah.
And our company's actually named after my oldest brother. He was Robert Dillard Suttenfield IV. And so RDS is the name of our company. Fortunately, when he passed away, the name ended there, right? Like there's not going to be a fifth, and so we kind of honored him with the name, and really at that point that was just a really tragic thing at that time in my life, and just trying to figure out what's the next step. I kind of struggled in school, didn't really have any path there, and so to be completely honest, at that point it was kind of like I want to hang out with my other brother, and let's just
Yeah.
figure some stuff out, just kind of get some traction here and see what's going on. And I'll tell you what I loved about the service business. Two things. One, I like people. Like I'm a big people person.
Yeah.
If I'm out, I'm gonna get on a plane here in a few hours and fly to Salt Lake City, and I'll probably talk for 3 or 4 hours to the person beside me, like if they're into it. I like solving problems. I like helping people. If I could have been anything, if I would have done anything else other than this, I probably would have been a teacher and coach. I have coached quite a bit of high school basketball and middle school
Yeah.
basketball over the years. I've probably coached more kids that don't belong to me than my own. I like coaching and helping and serving. And so in the service business, I get to solve problems, I get to help people. I'll tell you the other thing I really like about the lawn care space, to be honest with you, is it's a space where there's a lot of competition, but there's not a lot of people doing it. They're great at what they do, but they're not great business owners sometimes.
Yeah.
And we
Yeah.
weren't. Like when we started, we were 18 and 22. I mean, we didn't know what we were doing. And so, I mean, we didn't know how to balance a checkbook. We didn't know how to plan. We didn't know how to build a business model, budget, figure out the cost of how we should price our services, things like that. So we were really, horrible business owners as well. And so I realized that, it was a space where, like, if I had become a programmer, that's a pretty, professional space. And, doctors and lawyers, I mean, those spaces are pretty competitive. The space here honestly wasn't. And still there's not as much. Now it's interesting. Private equity is coming into the lawn care space, and they're scooping up companies. Private equity's everywhere today, it seems like. But 27 years ago, heck, I mean, what people are spending today in their lawn is amazing compared to 27 years ago. So we got in. I mean, kind of like Forrest Gump and the shrimp boat. After the storm. I don't know if I'm dating myself with that movie, but
No, that's
I
a
mean, like
great reference. That's a great
he was
reference.
around, and we were kind of around as this industry was kind of forming and becoming something. And my mom's dad was just a really good gardener. He had beautiful lawns in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. I mean, he was a Jerry Baker wrote gardening books all those years, and he had beautiful landscapes and stuff. So, I mean, I think we just probably, ingrained in us. Our family back a couple generations were farmers out in Iowa. And so, it's just kind of in that a little bit as well, kind of in the genes. And so it's a great fit. And, but there was not a major plan there. It was kind of a landing
Right.
spot. And yeah, so that's kind of how that formed.
No, I love it. And you're right. I think that was kind of the next piece I wanted to pick your brain on a little bit was, there's a lot of lawn care companies out there, right? Like there's a lot of people that say, I'll come mow your lawn, or I'll come. And I think it's probably in a lot of places, it's because of the low cost to entry, right?
Yeah.
The low barrier of entry, so that people can start a business for a few bucks and, I've already got a lawnmower. Let me go mow somebody else's lawn. Right. And so what you have to kind of, I would expect you probably have to do some things that are going to set you apart. And maybe that's with how you present yourself. Maybe that's the quality of the work that you do. I don't know what it is, but I feel like you really have to kind of go outside of your way to, like, yeah, we're going to mow your lawn just like this other guy down the road, but we're going to do it better and more efficiently or cheaper. I don't know how it all works. Do you feel like that was a challenge that you guys had to face as you grew, or there's probably other challenges as well, but what were some of those challenges that you had as you tried to kind of grow this business?
Yeah. Oh gosh, there was a million.
Yeah.
I like what Dave Ramsey says about success. He says, the only reason you can see me is because I'm standing on a pile of failure, right? And so successful people typically, do find themselves just learning from mistake after mistake after mistake. Henry Ford says, those who've never made a mistake work for those of us who have, right? So,
Right.
those are things that I always try to keep in mind. But the industry is ultra competitive, and our company evolved. I mean, there's really been like three. I think we're on our fourth evolution of this company. In the early days, we were really a landscaping company. We were a project based company. Man, I loved going out, meeting with a husband and wife in their house, and sitting at the kitchen table and saying, okay, what do you want to do here? What's your dream in this yard? And go back and sketch out the design and price out the work. And so we were trying to do what they call design build.
Right.
And really, we would do commercial work as well. I mean, I would go bid on commercial plans, and always had kind of big visions for building a project company. Be honest with you, I used to get really angry or frustrated. So how's the lawn care business? Like, well, we're not in the lawn care business. We're landscapers. We do design work, and so I just remember, kind of early days, feeling like it was kind of a little bit beneath us, and we wanted to be a little more professional in design, build, that kind of stuff. And honestly, that went really well. We scaled a pretty nice little company. like I said, my brother was with me for about 3 years, and then he actually had a passion for acting, and loaded up his car, drove to California, and pursued a career in acting, and did some pretty cool stuff with that. And then he actually ended up coming back to North Carolina. He actually works in insurance now, and but after that point, it was kind of me and just trying to figure out that space, and we
Right.
did pretty well there, and until 2007. And in 2007, the housing crisis actually absolutely decimated landscape design build. People were not going to spend money on that type of thing. And leading up to there, it had a pretty good run. Stock market was doing really well. Housing was booming. People were spending a lot of money, and then overnight, it seems like it just shifted.
Right.
And I remember being extremely worried. In those days, we were pretty leveraged as a company. Um, and I was really nervous, really worried. I had a young child at the time. We had our first kid. He was 3 or 4. My wife was not working. She had stopped teaching to stay home with him, and I was the sole provider. And I remember just being extremely fearful. And I learned a lot during that, and a lot of the lessons I teach and abide by today came from that experience. And so fortunately, we weathered it, and didn't have to file bankruptcy, didn't have to have anything repossessed, didn't have to do any of those major horrible things that happened. But it wasn't fun, and it was a really tough role for about 3 years. I mean, from 2007 to 2010, it was kind of back to grinding, right? Just kind of
Right.
that hustling and trying to figure it out. And I came across this guy on a YouTube video in 2011 named Jonathan Potoshnik, and he changed my life. He created a software called Service Autopilot, and through a YouTube video of him talking about how to build a lawn care company. Now, keep in mind, I'm not a lawn care guy, right? I'm a landscape guy. I'm not.
Right.
It's kind of not my thing. He he was talking about how to build a company that has reoccurring revenue, a company that has smaller, more residential services that have higher margin, and charging credit cards when you finish the service, and having all this in this system. And he was teaching and building a tribe of people to kind of follow him, and then they would become users of his software. But also, he would find out through those videos what were the problems that were facing these people, so he could build a software to help them. And I'm pretty beat down. I've been this 3 year run of just getting my butt kicked and just trying to survive. And fortunately, my wife, she did go back to teaching, and that helped us a lot. And we weathered it. But I was pretty worn down in 2010, and I was like, all right, this is the make or break. Like, I got to figure this out. I'm either going to grow up and get a real job, or I'm going to figure this out. And I started using the software, and a year later, he invited companies to come out and kind of do what's called a roundtable and learn from him. And he was just such a great guy, very genuine, and I just felt like I could trust him. And so I gave him, I remember it was $3,400. I put it on a credit card. I flew out to Texas. I stayed with some friends who lived close by, and I was there to learn. And I spent 3 days and just was engrossed and figured out how he had built this business model. He had built a lawn care company that was at the time somewhere between 3 and 4 million in residential only revenue, and they had a really cool sales system. But I just took that week, or those 3 days, and just learned everything I could. And I had been sort of beat up by the industry, so I kind of felt like I knew what not to do. I just needed to see a plan, and it resonated with me. I came back, and from 2012 to 2020, we scaled a residential service company well over 7 figures, and all charging credit cards, all residential, all reoccurring. We had really good margin for the industry. We had very good cash flow. We were not leveraged. We had gotten the company debt free, and just started building this service. And one thing we found in our company at that time was that more people wanted us to just fertilize the lawn in their yard, fertilize, do the treatments, weed control, and fertilization. Then they wanted us to do the other service like mowing and trimming
Right.
and things like that. So it was a really eye opener for us. For about 3 years, we're like, man, the fertilization is so much higher margin, it's so much easier. The equipment's less expensive. Why are we not doing more of that? And it was kind of like, man, for 20 years, we just knew we always cut grass. We always did, cleanup work. I always
Right.
did these things. And that was a time where I probably spent a year or two too long not seeing that. But in 2020, February 4th of 2020, we said, okay, we're all in. We're gonna go fertilization only. We're gonna get rid of all these clients that we mow for. We had a few relationships, and we actually gave those clients to some people with the idea that we would maintain the fert business for them as long as we could. And it worked really well. It was a good transition. Pretty scary, because about a month later, the country changed with COVID, and
Right.
obviously, I don't know how much you realize this or not, but the landscape industry did awesome during COVID. I mean, it people were at home, they had all this extra money in their pocket, they were doing all kinds of things in their lawn, so it ended up being fine for our industry. There was many that it wasn't, and that
Right.
was unfortunate. But it's been a great transition for us. We became a completely different company almost overnight because of the type of people we hired to do that work. And we started offering healthcare benefits, and we started offering retirement plans, and so it just became a different company. And so for us, I think, to answer your question, we're a little different because we do fertilize and do weed control. It's a little bit higher entry to that. We have a lower ticket price than we've ever had, probably the lowest ticket price per visit we've ever had, but it's pretty high margin, very reoccurring. You kind of have to, it's a little more technical. You got to kind of know what you're doing a little bit more. You can't
Right.
just, buy a mower and start cutting. And so, but we differentiate ourselves in a couple ways. One is our service, our customer service. If you contact our office, we're going to get you an estimate in hours. Like we've got a team sitting there ready to sell.
That's awesome.
So if you have an issue with us, we contact you same day. And we have a manager who is in the field, and he is ready to meet with you, go back to his van, do what he needs to do, come back and take care of the problem on site. So our response time is really quick. We've lowered our attrition rate. Industry attrition rate for what we do is about 20%, and we've lowered it to about 13% just by
That's awesome.
changing that type of thing. We talk all the time with our team that when there's an issue, that's actually a time to show the client how good you are. And what we do, it's a living organism. Turf is a living organism, so there's going to be issues. It's kind of like a doctor. If you got a doctor who said, "Hey, I'm gonna guarantee that you don't get cancer," the doctor can't do that. You're a
No.
living organism. All the doctor can do is take care of you as you are. And the turf is the same way. There's some things we can do. Like I can, doctor can say, "Hey, eat healthy, don't smoke, don't drink too much, moderation with a lot of things." And you're probably going to avoid some of these pitfalls. Turf is the same way, but we all know someone who's lived a very clean life, who's also got cancer, who's also been ill or had
Right.
certain sudden things. So turf grass is the same way. I can do everything perfect. And we do. We have clients side by side on streets all the way down the street. And it's interesting how we'll do the same thing for same yard, and one has something that we just can't control. And so the response time to those people is very important. And honestly, I'm 46. I've been doing a lot of doctor visits this year, and it dawned on me, our response time as a lawn care business is 10 times faster than any doctor I visited this year.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And so, and that's your health, that's your life, right? We're talking about, we say it all the time, it's just grass, man.
Yeah.
But so I think we've proven to our clients that, we are affordable, but ultimately it's funny. They don't really care as much about price as they do how quickly do you get an estimate, how quickly do you respond when there's an issue, and they're judging you from the very first time they call. If you don't answer the call live, that's a huge strike. People don't leave messages today. So from a sales perspective, you need to be taking the call live. You need to be responding with an estimate in hours. 12 years ago or 10 years ago, when I was meeting with Jonathan, I remember he was like, "Hey, we get estimates out in 24 hours or less," and that was game changer 12,
Right.
10 years ago. Now it's hours, like an hour. I mean, and
Amazing.
so those are the things we try to do to differentiate ourselves a little bit. Yeah, that's kind of our story and kind of how we're a little different, I think.
I love it. Well, and you know, we were talking before, and before we started recording, and I think this is kind of the next piece of this that I think is so cool and will resonate so well with our audience. But Aaron, you talked about how like you've built this business to a point where now you don't have to be working in the business day to day, right? Like you can spend more time maybe working on how to grow the business and how to train your employees. Like you don't necessarily have to be out there driving a van or a truck around, you know, taking care of customers. And that's because you've built it in such a way that you can do that. Maybe let's talk a little bit about that. What are some things that you've done along the way that have helped you build your business to this point where now you've got the freedom to maybe go and do some business coaching for some friends or some businesses all over the place, right? Like I know you've worked with some people and helped kind of coach them in their business as well.
Yeah.
How have you been able to develop your RDS Lawn Care to a spot where you have that kind of freedom?
Yeah. So it started, meeting Jonathan, and the service autopilot community. Jonathan was great at bringing people together. And so there were people that came together in that community. Jason Cupp is a person who works really well in that community, and I met him through Jonathan, and a lot of great businesses. Jason's a consultant, does a lot of financial consulting and just core value teaching. But during the roundtable that I did with Jonathan in 2012, there was also other roundtables that happened, out from ours. Jonathan would bring in 4 companies at a time, and there was another roundtable that met that I wasn't a part of, but I got to know those guys through that community. Mike Callahan, Garrett Matthews, Chad Cranston were a couple guys that were on this other roundtable. We got together and created a little mastermind group, and we would meet weekly through it was what was the Zoom before Zoom? It was like oh gosh, there was some kind of like video conferencing before
Skype,
that. What was it?
right? Was a big
Yeah,
one.
it was like
Yeah.
that was another one too. Anyway, we were doing Zoom calls in the like 2014, and what we would do is we agreed if you join this group, it was free. There wasn't a leader. It was just peer driven, and we would treat like we were all shareholders in the company. So we'd have to kind of present our company each week and what we were doing, like we were presenting it to shareholders. And it was really cool, and we developed a good friendship. And so it was through communities like that. I was always trying to get out of Charlotte and find out this. At that time, YouTube and the internet and all that had kind of matured to a point where it was connecting people. And again, kind of like the industry, technology hit at the same time. And it's just been really cool to see all the doors that opened through that. And so I was traveling all over the country to meet with these teams and meet these people. And I was investing a lot of time into, learning what other people were doing. And so it kind of just started developing through that. And so we built the company up to a point where in 2021 or 22, I was able to kind of pull out of the company and not do a whole lot. I had built a sales team. I built a production team. I built a good front office, answering service. And honestly, it was rolling. And I'm more of a builder. I'm not a great manager. I'm not a good, like, hammer the same nail every day guy. And so I really, I had, for 20 some years, I envisioned building something that I didn't need to be at all the time. And I'd read this really great book called Built to Sell. And I highly recommend it's one of my favorite books. And it's an older book now. And actually Jonathan gave it to me at that meeting. But I read that book, and they talk about, I don't know if you've ever read it or not, but they talk about building a company that is valuable to sell, right? And
Right.
Selling a company, there's a lot of companies that are sold, where it's like owner financing, or there's a death, or there's a health issue, and the company is is sort of consolidated or dissolved. But this book was all about how do you build something that is so valuable that someone wants to come in and write you a check for it. And they talked about in that book, well, you have to have a management team. You have to have, a sales team. That company has to run without the owner. And if your company's not doing that, then you're not going to really be valuable to an investor. And so that resonated with me, but I didn't really quite understand what that meant. But I knew I wanted to put those teams in place, and I started doing that. I kind of had a little weekly meeting rhythm. I'd read a book called Traction that kind of talked about EOS and Entrepreneur Operating System, and it had this meeting rhythm that they did, and it had an annual and quarterly meeting rhythm too. And started kind of dabbling with that, but I wasn't really committed. And so I decided, I'm not really in the business that much daily. I'm trying to run this company and let people elevate people to do other things. And that was going pretty well. But I'll tell you, I got absolutely bored because for the first time in my life, I didn't have anything to grind on. I didn't have anything to go do. I didn't have anything that, that required me to be anywhere. And I was bored. And, there's been 2 points in my life, that time and then another time in mid 2015, sometime in that range. We had kind of gotten the company in a place financially where we could breathe a little bit. And, we're not independently wealthy, but, need to go to work and need the company to make some money. But, I wasn't worried about money as much. And I had worked really hard for a long time in my career. It was all about building the company to provide things, right? Provide for my family, provide some nice experiences, maybe that dream car, that dream vacation or whatever. And I was chasing those things because what I just knew, right? That's why, if you were asking 18 or 20-year-old, what do you want to do? I want to make money. I want to build something, right? But, it's kind of pretty common, right? And I really didn't have a purpose, but I needed to survive and I needed to make money for my family. And what kind of happened in 2007, 2010. So that money was always kind of like, I got to grind. I got to make money. I got to make money. And I remember in 2015, I was on a beach in Antigua. I was there with my parents and my kids and my wife, and it was just a great time. And I remember being a little bit depressed, not because those people depressed me. They're awesome people, but I remember just thinking, this is it. Like this is nice, but man, there's got to be more to life than this. And I just remember kind of being a little bit like, like I don't know how to describe it. Not depressed. That's probably not the best word, but just kind of like, I thought this would be a little bit better. Like this is, and and also kind of pulling out of the company were 2 times where it's like, I need to figure out my purpose. Like there's got to be it's not about, because at some point we're going to make enough money. It's just not going to matter. And for some people. Now, if you're trying to make the house payment or you're trying to eat, I'm not talking about that. That's basic needs, right? Basic needs have got to be met. If they're not, then we're going to do whatever we have to do. But there's a point. It doesn't take much money really to where you lose that purpose. And there's a lot of things that you and I will not do that are ethical and moral, no matter how much you pay us. You can't put me in a cubicle. You put me in a cubicle without a window, man, I'm going to lose my brain. I'm not going to do that for $1 million a year. And so I've learned that I don't think any of us really deep down work for money. Transactional relationships are not going to work well. And so it just kind of had an epiphany over a long period of time for this. And so I started coaching because I was bored. And I started helping my friend Mike Callahan, who I met through this community. And Mike had started consulting and teaching people how to use Service Autopilot, the automation features of Service Autopilot. And he had built this great little company called Simple Growth, and they help with automations through Service Autopilot. They're awesome. And Mike was like, "Hey, man, I need some help. And you're bored, and Service Autopilot, business. How about I'll contract you to help me with some people?" And I was like, "Cool, dude, I'm in." I don't know where it's going, but I've always been someone who I'll try things. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. And I told Mike, and I agreed, like, listen, if it doesn't work for you, tell me, Mike. If it doesn't work for me, I'll tell you. We've been working on that agreement ever since. And so I just started helping companies, and Mike was having me do, more building the back end of the software for them and helping it run their company. What I noticed is I could help their company more than just software. And because I had done it. I had been through all these. I had all these battle scars from all this stuff, and it dawned on me. I was like, man, these companies, they want to talk to somebody. They don't, where does an entrepreneur go to talk to people. It's hard. I can't go to my friends and tell them some of the things that are going on in my business. I can't. Sometimes you can't even tell your family. It's not it's a lonely place. Sometimes there's a great analogy that says being an entrepreneur is like riding a tiger through your town. You're sitting on top of this tiger, and everybody's looking up going, look at this guy ride this tiger through town, because everybody thinks every entrepreneur is making just tons and tons of money, right? And the reality is a lot of them are. And I'll tell you, in the 27 years, more times than not, I wasn't. And but you're riding this tiger, and people are like, man, look at you, you're doing it, man. You're not working for the man, you're running it. And the entrepreneur's on top of this tiger going, what the hell am I doing on top of a tiger? I have no business being here. And
Such
so
a good analogy.
to me,
that's awesome.
That's so, not having those people to talk to is tough. And so I found that helping Mike, I was kind of just an ear. It's kind of like, hey man, get on the couch. Let's talk about your business. Lay down here. Let's talk about your business. And that developed, and Mike has developed an awesome little community of a mastermind group where we coach and teach. And I met a guy that was kind of a mutual connection for you guys and us is Dan Rouse. And the dream manager from Infusionsoft and Keep, and Dan is just an awesome guy. And I'm actually going to be meeting Dan here in a few hours in Salt Lake City. I'm excited. Anytime I get to spend time with Dan, it's awesome. But Dan was brought in to be the leader of this group, and I've learned so much from Dan. And Mike's been awesome to build this community and bring these people together. And so what kind of went from helping people with their software has really become, I actually coach. And I've got about 10 companies that I work with regularly. It's anything from a Zoom meeting like we're doing for a couple hours to I've got a client in Seattle, Washington. I've got a client in South Boston. And so I stretch the entire country. But I'll go out and work with them for multiple days, and I'll work with their leadership team, and I'll walk them through solving the problems of their company. And I love that because I'm a builder. I'm not a manager. So I get to go into companies and get to go, hey, let's fix this stuff. And I'll tell you, it's emotional. It's not uncommon for at least one point in an on-site for somebody to come to tears. And because of how emotional this is and how hard it is. It's being an entrepreneur is the hardest thing to do. It's not easy. And you kind of have to be a little bit crazy. Like you got to be wired a little differently to put up with what happens. And there's just so it's fun to go in and give those people hope and help them and work with them and try to solve their problems. And so that's been super rewarding. I've the last 18 to 24 months, I've been just pretty deep into that. I spend about 5 hours a week with my company, RDS, and I work them through this same annual, quarterly, and weekly planning and meeting rhythm. We implement the Elite business system. I know you guys are pretty familiar with that, I'm sure.
Oh yeah.
We're a purpose-driven company. Our purpose at RDS is to save lawns and impact people. I can't get excited about growing RDS Lawn Care financially. My life's not going to be better if this company triples in size. Financially, it doesn't matter to me. But what I've learned is through the company, and I'm not Mother Teresa. I'm not trying to be, somebody that's a martyr or anything like that. But but it is exciting to see if my company grows, who it can impact, right? How far can that go? And we've got an awesome team that gets that, and they're excited about that. It's kind of funny if you stop chasing the money and you actually think about the people. Marcus Lemonis has a great show. I don't think it's still on, but it's called The Prophet. Did you ever watch that?
I did not.
The Prophet oh man. So go look up old reruns of The Prophet. But he had this thing where he talked about people, process, and product. It's like if you get the people right, you get the product right, and the process. The 3 Ps is what he called it, right? And I've heard some people say the 3-legged stool. If any one of those legs is out of balance, the stool's going to fall over. But Marcus Lemonis, he was just a people person. He cared about people. He owns Camping World. He's the guy that owns all the
Okay.
Camping Worlds, and
Yeah.
it's just a really dynamic business, a purpose-driven business owner. Right, he puts people first, um, or it appears he does. I don't know him personally. It could be all show, but it seems pretty genuine. And so the thing about having a purpose-driven company, when you truly know the purpose of your company, and it's a purpose that's a little bit bigger than, hey, as the owner, I'd like to get a Corvette this year, and I'd like to retire in 10 years. Like,
Yeah.
no one's going to come work for you to go do those things. Now, if you get those things, but you also have a purpose, they're going to be fine with that. They're not going to, hold that
Right.
against you. But, people want to be a part of something that's a little bigger than themselves. And so, we exist to save lawns and impact people. We're happy when that's happening. Like, I love seeing the worst house in the neighborhood turn from the worst lawn to the best. I'm super energized by that. We love that. And then when we have a team member join our team who's been, been put down in other jobs, there's a lot of bad business owners out there. That's the one thing I've learned. Business owners will tell you there's a lot of bad employees. There's a lot of bad business owners who I
Yeah.
think create bad employees.
Big time.
And they just use and abuse employees to get what they can out of them. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't mean to. I wasn't trying to, but we did at one point. We were just turning and burning people, trying to get things done. We didn't have a lot of money. We were trying to fix things. Didn't know any better. I didn't, it just trying to get stuff done. I didn't have the capacity or the time to be caring as much as I should have been in the early days. And so, I'm sure there's some people who are like, man, you were that guy. I'm like, sure, I was. And so, but you've gotta care about the people some, and you got to work on that. And it's a balance, because there's going to be some people who take advantage of that. And we've learned
Big
that.
time.
We try to balance that. Right. I tell them all the time, don't mistake this friendly way of doing business with weakness. We do have a
Right.
line that we're not going to cross. But we have some core values. We practice real open communication. We're dependable. We do the right thing. We listen. We care. We serve. Like, those are our core values. And if you can work in those three things, man, you're going to jam here. You're going to like being here. Had a guy just left our company a few weeks ago, and in December he said, I just don't really like people. I just don't like our clients that much. I was like, hey, man, it's going to be a pretty tough place for you, because you better
Yeah.
like them. I need you
Yeah.
to like them. I need you to put them first. And so, and he's not a bad guy. Like, he's not
Right.
a bad person. He just didn't understand the culture. And so, so we jam in that. We teach that. We live it. It's really cool,
That's
because,
awesome.
most consultants say, hey, I used to do this, right? I used to have a company, and now I help you. I'm actively in a company, and I spend about 5 hours a week with them, and then I coach full time, or I hope to coach full time. So, yeah.
That's
I
awesome.
don't know if that answered all your questions there.
No,
but,
it did. It did. Aaron, that was awesome. There's so many good pieces of information there. I know our audience is going to love. I love the concept of the three-legged stool analogy is great. And that whole conversation. I just love the idea that you can grow a business to a point where you don't have to spend every waking hour working on the business, and you can do it the right way. It wasn't a profit driven motive for you, right? Like, you were motivated by these core values that you wanted to impact people, and you wanted to make a difference, and you were able to do that and live your values, but also grow your business to a point where now you can spend more time with your family and spend some time doing things that you love doing, like coaching, both sports and other businesses, right? Like, you're able to do these other things because you built your business in such a way to do it. And so I love that. I love that conversation. And I know our audience, especially in the service industry, will feel that same way, because so many service-based companies, the owners are also a technician, or they are also the general manager, right? And they have to spend every waking hour 70, 80, 90 hours a week just to try and keep their business afloat. And I think if they do some of these things that you're talking about, getting a vision, building a mission, doing some of these things, they can grow their business in such a way that they don't have to be doing everything.
In a quick, like 2 to 3 minutes, I'll tell you something
You're
real
good.
quick that I think, if are we talking to a lot of service type businesses? Is that
Oh yeah.
kind of the audience? Okay. So I should have asked that before.
You're good. You're
So
good.
we coach through these 6 steps, and I'll kind of share them with you. They're free. They'll be worth what these people are going to pay for them. Nah, I think they're worth more than that. But so we teach these 6 steps. So the first step is, and this is for someone who wants to scale a company, right? Somebody who has a company, who's the technician. I get this call a lot. In our business, I've got about 400 or 500 clients, and I'm treating the lawns, and I want to get my first employee. And so, or, I've got, 200 mowing clients, and I need to hire a team, and I've got a couple teams out there, but I have to still help them. So we're talking to companies that are trying to go from, 0 to a million. Our industry is kind of the size company. So, first step, 4 hours a week. You got to learn to take 4 hours a week of your time as an owner of the company and block that time and protect it and work on your business, not in the business, right? In the business is selling, in the business is fixing equipment, in the business is doing work, in the business is invoicing, right? We're talking
Right.
like setting up a system of how you sell so you can hand that off to someone else, building a rate matrix and understanding your cost and your pricing of the service, or, something that, is a system that you put in place that removes you from that, right? And so we can teach about any position in our company in about 2 to 3 weeks, to where someone could do that job. Obviously, if they do it for a year, they're really good at it, but they
Right.
could help us in about 2 to 3 weeks in almost every position: selling, scheduling, producing, doing work, that type of thing. Now, so on the business, the first step, you got to learn to block time. And so, and I think a calendar's the best place to do that. I think Google has a great calendar. Apple, use your block time and treat
Yeah.
it like it's a doctor's appointment. If you had a doctor's appointment today, good example, this call that we scheduled today, neither one of us were going to miss this call, right?
Yeah.
Your wife,
100%.
my wife could call me, whatever. Your kids could call me, like, hey, I had told my daughter, hey, I'm going to be on a call. Don't bother me for the next little bit, right? So
Yeah.
that's what you have to block this time, right? Don't bother me. I'm working on the business right now. If someone dies or someone gets hurt, yes, come get me. Otherwise, call the fire department, call the police first, then come get me. So, second step, you got to get your financial house in order. The one thing I've seen with my personal company and all the companies I've worked with is the ones who have their financial house in order can scale. The ones who go buy the big house or the expensive cars or take the fancy vacations before they can afford it can't afford to grow their business. So if you're driving a car that has $1,000 payment on it, sell the dang car and put that money towards marketing or growing your business or hiring people or
Yep.
whatever. But starve the company of the really nice shiny things, and really work this company and build the model. Get your financial personal house in order. Get the business in order. You need to know your break even number. If you don't know what the break even number is for your company per hour, you need to figure that out. And there's a lot of models out there. You can Google them, but figure out what it costs your company per hour to operate. And so you can set your rate matrix and build those things. If you're not balancing your books every month by the 15th of the next month for the previous month, you're doing it wrong. If you're waiting every 6 months to figure out your books, you're doing it wrong. If you're not using QuickBooks or you're not using a bookkeeper, you don't have a CPA, you're doing it wrong. You're not going to scale a company. And I don't know if I were to, ask businesses, hey, raise your hand. Do you want to scale your business? I guarantee you every single business will be like, yep, I want to
Everybody's
scale my
like, yep,
business.
I
Right.
want my business to
Okay.
grow. Yep.
And it's like, I'm not a skinny guy, right? If you were to ask me, do you want to lose weight? Yep. But am I willing to do what it takes to do that? Right. It's not easy. And so you got to step 2, you got to get your finances in order. Step 3 is the big one. You got to simplify the business. There are companies that are a mile wide and an inch tall. They have too many service offerings. You got to figure
Totally.
out what you do well and do that and be committed to it. And the problem is, many businesses are started because my situation. I got to figure out how to feed my family. I got to figure out how to feed myself. Right? I was 18 and flunked out of college, and what was I going to be? And so it's like, yeah, I cut grass. Yeah, I'll landscape your thing. Yeah, I'll put irrigation in. Yeah, I'll do landscape lighting. Yeah, I'll do Christmas lights. I mean,
Yeah.
I could keep going of the things we've done. And ultimately, it was really cool in the early days to figure out what we liked. I think it was great to go try a bunch of things, but at some point you got to say, this is who we are. We are going to do this and we're going to be really good at it. I had a call today with a landscape lighting only company that is, that's all they do. I know there's a company in Charlotte that was actually bought by private equity. All they do is put in landscape lighting. It's really cool. And, that's awesome. And so simplify your business services, right? Most of the time in the service industry, we do too many things. When you do too many things, it's hard to sell quickly. It's hard to teach the people who do it and work for you how to do it well. And so simplify the business. At that point, that means simplify all the processes. Create simple processes. Simplify the way you pay your people. We pay our people on performance. It's really easy. If whatever they bill for the week, they get a base salary of 13% of that. If they hit a certain number, which is pretty easy to hit over 5 days, they get an extra 1% bonus. So they get 14% of anything they bill. And so it's really easy for them. And we're very open with our books. We don't hide anything from our employees. I will show them the P&L statement. I don't hand it out, but I do show it. And I'm very transparent with my team. I want them to see what it costs to run this company. I don't have any hidden secrets, and I don't have to show them anything. I own 100% of the company. I'm not bound to share any of that. Right. But if you want to build a team that cares about your company and cares about their job, then the more they're a part of that, the more they're going to care. So simplify all those things. Don't make it hard. I've heard really complex payment plans and bonus structures and all this stuff. Make it simple. I knew that we needed to keep our labor below 15% of what we sold. By the way, our guys do pretty well. Our technicians are making, in Charlotte, North Carolina, pretty well. They make about $50,000 a year. Plus, we pay 75% of their health care. We give 3% retirement match and paid vacation. So, it's a good technical job. And they don't have to know anything. They can come in here and know nothing about how we do this and get that job. So step 3, simplify the business. Step 4, if you get the first 3 steps in order, step 4 is pretty easy. We teach you how to hire A players. And so you need to learn, you need to develop a strategy for getting A players. And those first 3 steps, newsflash, if you don't have 1, 2, and 3 in order, there's no A player that's going to come want to work for your circus.
Nope, nobody wants to come work for a company like that. Yeah.
No. And so I love Chick-fil-A. I think it's a great model for business. I think the food's great. And so I'm a big fan. I use an example all the time of this. If you're a Chick-fil-A employee, you're busy. Those jokers get people through their car line like nothing else, right? Yeah. If I see 4 cars in the Burger King line, I'm skipping. If the line could be wrapped around Chick-fil-A 3 times, I'll jump in there because I know 10 minutes I'm through, right? Yep. And I think about the employee who works there. That's got to be a pretty hectic environment. But you know what? They're always happy. And I think they're happy because they have a simple process, right? They sell chicken like 2 different ways. And they get people through. They cook it well. They get it out. They don't, where the Burger King employees over there with 4 cars, you can't get 4 cars through the line. And they look mad all the time. And they are, because they're probably disappointed in how the system's run over there. And so, you're not going to get an A player if you don't have a good system. And then step 5 is client acquisition. And that's what you and I work on trying to figure out, right? Yep. It's the hardest step in the steps, by the way. And kudos to you guys for trying to figure it out. Yeah. But it's hard and it's not, and it's ever changing. But if you don't have steps 1, 2, 3, and 4 in order, spending money trying to market your business is foolish. Yeah, it's like I like to say it's like a rocket ship. It'd be like if NASA on day 2 of designing the rocket brought the rocket fuel in and the charge and put it all together and said, boom, it would explode into a million pieces. People would die, right? Yeah. And so, you're building this rocket ship, right? Everybody's trying to scale, right? You're building this rocket ship, and steps 1 through 4 are what have to be in place. And then you can go figure out client acquisition and marketing and developing that and scaling. And then step 6, you got to learn to be a CEO. When you have steps 1 through 5 working, by the way, I said the 5th one was hard. 6 is hard as well, because most of the time, what you use to get your company through those 5 steps are not the skills that you'll need at step 6. And they're not really teaching these skills a lot, right? I mean, they're not. you're not going to learn them in an undergraduate degree. I don't think you're going to learn them necessarily. The last person to talk about this stuff, but I don't think they're teaching these with MBAs. They're teaching upper level management probably, but like the head person, right? The guy in charge, the girl in charge, the CEO of the company, that's just a different structure. And so we teach that through the elite training, right? We teach that structure and how to run that. And so, those are the 6 steps. If you're a service company listening to this podcast right now, you implement those 6 steps in your business. And if you have trouble at any one of those steps, go find someone. The internet is full of people who can help you. Go find someone to help you with your books. Go find someone to help you simplify your service. Don't be afraid to simplify your service. By the way, it's the hardest one to get a company to do, to give up business. We jerked our company down from a 7-figure business in 2020 to simplify. And it was the greatest thing we ever did. We took off like a rocket after that. And so sometimes you got to take a few steps backwards in business to really get set right, build that foundation. So appreciate you giving me that time. I think those 6 steps are, I'd hate to be on this and not share that, with some companies. So.
No, that was amazing. That's a great way to close us out, Aaron. That's a perfect way to really simplify everything that you've talked about. And ultimately, it's going to allow them to have more freedom, right? We talked about how you kind of developed and built the freedom into your business now, and you kind of did it the hard way, right? It took a lot of trial and error, and it took several years to do. And you've kind of simplified all that, and you've taken your knowledge and you've been like, hey, these are the 6 steps that you can do what took me several years to do. You can do it in a lot shorter span of time if you just devote your time to these 6 steps. And so I love that. It's going to be super, super valuable for our audience, which, the majority of the people that listen to this are in that industry, or, in a related industry, I guess I should say, in the service world. And so I think that's going to be super, super helpful. Aaron, thank you. That was amazing. We got a lot of really awesome information here. I wouldn't be a good host if I didn't wrap up this podcast in the same way that I wrap up all of our others, which is asking the big 3 questions that we ask all of our guests. So I'm going to dive right into that. First question. You already mentioned a couple of books that you really love, that you're passionate about, but is there a book or maybe a podcast that you're reading or listening to right now that you just really, really love?
Man, so How to Win Friends and Influence People, probably one of the greatest books I've ever read. So good.
Yeah, it's a great book.
If you haven't read it, I know it's on a lot of business book lists. I've got a 17-year-old son who actually just started his first day in our company. He's a senior in high school, and he's got a lot of his credits out of the way, so he's actually working part-time with our company. And I had him read the book this year, I think it's a great book. Built to Sell. Awesome book if you're a service-based business. By the way, it's a book that kind of follows a mythical company, fictitious company, I guess. And it's actually a website marketing company, believe it or not. So that's cool. It's not lawn care based at all, but Built to Sell. Who Not How is a great book I read last year. And if you're somebody who's trying to get out of daily grind, I think that's a good one. Like who's going to do this? Not how are we going to do it always. Profit First. I live by that. I love that book. Mike Michalowicz has written quite a few books that are great. He wrote The Pumpkin Plan. One book that I hadn't looked at in a long time, I'm actually rereading it, and I think it applies, is The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Yep. And Stephen Covey. I've actually started rereading it. I'm kind of going back. I read it 20 years ago, and I actually had it on CD. That's how old it is. Okay. So I'm actually
you had it on CD. That's amazing. So not cassette, not that old, but you had it on CD.
Yep. My favorite podcasts are How I Built This. I don't know if you ever listen to How I Built This podcast.
Oh, yeah. That's an awesome one.
Awesome podcast. So those are my books podcast. Yeah.
Love it. Yep. Second question. I know obviously you wear a lot of hats, or you did, right? You've kind of built your business now. You've got a little bit more freedom, but you're now helping other businesses grow as well with your coaching. How do you relax at the end of a long day? What do you do to recharge your batteries?
I'm not a good relaxer. Probably my biggest weakness. It's
Okay.
something I need to figure out. Honestly, I'm not. I don't like sitting on beaches. It bores me out of my mind. Funny, I used to play a lot of golf, and played less golf when I pulled out of my company than I did when I was in the grind. And I was telling somebody this morning about this. It's like I think I played a lot of golf when I was really crazy and stressed. It was a good stress
Mm,
reliever for me.
yep.
Um, you know, a lot of my personality changed whenever I could do whatever I wanted. And it's funny, I love entrepreneurship, man. I am happiest when I'm doing this right here, or when
I
I'm
love it.
talking and helping a company. So I need to learn how to relax a little bit better. But no, I do walk. I used to run a lot. I don't run as much anymore. I need to lose a little weight, but I'll go for a walk. And we live near boating is pretty big in North Carolina. We're near in Charlotte. We're near some lakes, and I've got a boat about 10 minutes from here. I like to get on. So that's kind of my relaxing is
I
got
love
to
it.
be something that's moving actually. So
I love it. I
yeah,
love it. Well, you're in, I would call it the golf mecca of a
yeah.
state when it comes to golfing. And so, you know, you're not really into it as much now, but I might have to make my way out to North Carolina so we can play a little
Well,
golf there,
I
Aaron.
live on
So
a golf course, and I do play. I mean, I still play, but I thought I would be playing a lot more. I thought I'd be
right.
kind of
It's
down there all
interesting
the
how that's
time, and
changed. Yeah.
yeah, I drive by the driving range when I leave my neighborhood, and I just don't get there as much as I thought I would. And I still play, but not as much. And certainly, if you're ever in Charlotte, you got my number. Get on the get with me. We'll play for
Let's
sure.
do it.
Uh,
Last question. And again, Aaron, thank you. This has been super, super helpful just for me personally, but I know for our audience as well. Last question. If you could rewind to the beginning of your career with RDS in starting that business with your brother back in the day, what would be one thing that you would tell your younger self?
hmm. Oh gosh. Um, that's a good question. I probably would not let the failure bother me as much. That's a good question. I tell my kid, I've got two kids. I've got a 12-year-old and a 17-year-old. My daughter's 12. She's in seventh grade. They just started school today, back. And my son's 17. He's a senior in high school. My advice to my children is to try a bunch of things in their 20s. Like and not not the things that society might think, not drugs, alcohol, and all that stuff, but like try a bunch of careers, man. Just go out there and just don't worry about what society thinks is a cool career, or uh, you know don't chase something that society tells. Don't try to be an influencer or those stupid things. Go out there and try a bunch of things. Try to find something that helps somebody. Try to find a path that's underserved. And just, I think from 20 to 30, those kids should be just absolutely finding their way. And the problem is, my son's going through this right now. Every question I get about my son is, "Where's he going to school? Where's he going to school?" Well, he has no idea what he wants to be.
Yeah.
And so, more power to you if you went this path and you liked it. But I just don't want an underwater basket weaving degree for my kid,
Yeah.
and he gets out and does something he doesn't even need that for. I just don't. It's an expensive proposition right now. It's not an experience that's really affordable for a lot of kids, and I see a lot of kids his age making decisions that honestly they have no idea what they want to do.
Right.
And so I guess I would go back and say, don't let the failure bother you. Don't let society tell you what you want to be. Interesting. I'm friends with a couple of guys that are pretty really successful doctors, and they you know they want to be entrepreneurs. Like it's
Yeah.
funny how many people are like, I wish I could get out of the banking industry is big in Charlotte, and I mean, I wish I didn't have to work for the bank, and they've got great jobs, they're making great money, but they just, I think, society kind of pushed them to the safe, job, right? One of my best friends turned 55, and he was in medical device sales, and awesome guy, and he's about 10 years older than me, and he had the best year he ever had, and at 55, the big corporation kicked him out. And it's just sad because,
Yeah.
he's okay. He's done well for himself, but he's not done. He wasn't ready to stop. He wants to be, out there helping people, doing things. And so I think, don't be afraid to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
I think I was kind of looking at it as, man, well, this is kind of the path I got to go because, I've kind of screwed up this college thing and it's not really working out well. And I would not be as fearful of that. And it's probably my passion right now is just teaching people how good of an opportunity it is. And if you get with the right people, it can be very successful.
I love it. It's a great way to close us out, Aaron. Thanks again for everything. This podcast has been awesome. That's some great advice for all of those that are listening here, and for younger Aaron, right? Like it's some awesome advice. And I really appreciate it. So thanks again for coming on. Where can people find you? Where should they, if they're interested in what you have to say or want to learn more, where can they find you?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, Aaron Suttenfield. I'm on Facebook. Simple Growth Systems. You can find me there as well. So yeah, I'm pretty easy to find. I'm not here to try to get found necessarily as much as just to talk about something I love doing. So
love it. Well, we might throw your LinkedIn in the description, and
yeah,
but other than that, Aaron, I really appreciate it, and we'll talk with you later.
Sounds great, Hayden. I appreciate it, man. Thank you so much.
This has been Success Elevated, making you a little bit better one show at a time. Thanks for joining us. Please subscribe on YouTube or any other major podcast platform to listen to more episodes. We are proudly brought to you by Spot On Solutions. If you'd like to learn more about how we can help you grow your business, please check us out at spotonsolutions.com.